Thank you everyone for joining. So the purpose of this webinar today is just to give you an overview of what's known as the VIM Foundation solutions or beyond invoices. Okay. So I'm Rob Howarth and I'm the OpenText Delivery Director at Proceed. So I've been working with OpenText and SAP and VIM for quite a number of years now. And in the whole archiving, document management, OpenText kind of space. Okay, like I say, so I've only got a few slides. I'll try to keep it brief, and then I'm going to do a demonstration on one of the beyond invoice solutions, because I think that's probably more interesting and probably better what you want to see rather than just a load of PowerPoint slides. Okay, as I say, I've just got a few slides to introduce the VIM solutions. Then we'll do a demonstration of the order confirmation. We'll have a quick summary and then I'll open the floor to questions at the end. What are we talking about when we say the beyond invoices? Okay, so I don't know how many of you are familiar with VIM, but VIM is the vendor invoice management SAP add-on from OpenText. Okay, now it used to be that VIM was just all about invoices. Okay, and you bought your license depending on how many invoices you wished to process a year. Let's say 100,000 invoices a year. Okay, but that's changed recently, and now your invoice license count is effectively a document license count. So you're no longer restricted just to a pure invoice within VIM, which is now we have these beyond invoice solutions which cover the other kind of related documents in P2P and O2C. So order confirmations, delivery notes, quotations, and in our order to cash, we've got sales orders and remittance advice. Okay. So now all of these kind of incoming document solutions are now bundled together with your invoice, in effect, what was or is your invoice license. Okay. Which means we use the same technology, the same deployment. We still use what was previously called Business Center Inbound. That's now called the VIM Foundation Inbound. So it's kind of it's the same. It's just the latest versions have been kind of rebranded slightly to kind of give the impression that it's more than just invoices when you buy a VIM license. So each solution is effectively an out-of-the-box best practice workflow, much the same way VIM is for processing each document scenario. So we do data mapping from the OCR into the workflow using Business Center Inbound or VIM Foundation Inbound, and we have the same concept of like business rules, workflow. We can refer invoices, so it's very much similar in concept to invoice processing in VIM, which is they now call the VIM invoice solution, if this makes sense. Okay. So the purpose of the webinar is, to introduce you to the new Beyond Invoices solutions and highlight the benefit of maximizing your VIM deployment with these solutions and how actually by implementing the Beyond Invoices, you can actually improve your traditional invoice management processing. So when you talk about Beyond Invoices, it all comes down, as so often is the case with SAP projects, about business process improvement. Okay, so we can't just, or we shouldn't just implement a technology without looking at what the underlying business process is. Okay, because everything has a follow-on, especially in VIM. The invoice, if you like, is at the end of the process. Okay, so if you haven't optimized everything that goes before it, then you won't get a good throughput of invoices in VIM. When we talk about throughput, is how many invoices you can post a day. Okay, so we have the magical no-touch invoice processing and no-touch three-way match, which is fine, but what we're actually looking for is is a high level overall throughput. Okay, and the no-touch processing would be part of that. Okay. Now, so there's things we can do with the business process. So many companies would have like a no purchase order, no pay policy, which is fine. That's good, but don't go and ruin it by doing retrospective PO creation, which I've seen that happen on a customer. They say, oh yes, we've got a really high PO match rate with our invoices. We don't need something like VIM. And when we drill down into it a bit further, then it turns out that they actually get the invoice, they look at what's on the invoice, then they create the purchase order to match the invoice, and then they post the invoice against the purchase order and say everything's absolutely fabulous. We got no issue. Okay, so but then if we're going to create a purchase order, let's make sure that we create it accurately. Okay, so we're actually ordering what we want at the right price. So, know and understand, the materials you want to buy, what's the unit price, what's the charges, if there's delivery costs, so you can include like a delivery line or a shipping confirmation on the order. So again, this is, okay, we'll create a purchase order, but unless it's actually got the correct information, then it's just going to create problems when the invoice arrives and it doesn't match the PO just because someone's been told they have to create a PO. Okay, and they might just say, okay, I need to create a purchase order to whack me for £100 for fire equipment. Yeah, tick the box, no PO, no pay. I've created my purchase order. But then, of course, they phone up the supplier and say, okay, I've created you a purchase order. I want, 5 fire blankets, 3 fire extinguishers, and a medical kit, right? And that's what'll come in on the invoice. But of course, that's not going to match what was created on the purchase order. Okay. Now, correct in use of the GRIV flag, the goods receipt invoice verification flag. When should or should this not be used? When is it needed to actually prevent us from posting an invoice if we don't have a goods receipt? And if we are going to do goods receipting, then we need to make sure that it's timely and it's accurate, and people are receipting when they should be as soon as things come into the stores. And it's actually make it in effect some part of someone's job description, not just something they have to do because you receive the invoice and accounts payable phone you up and say, oh, please can you good receipt this. So as always, you should be looking to optimize your business processes in line with the solutions you're implementing, and not implement a solution as a way of correcting a bad business process in the first place. A bad business process is always going to be a bad business process, regardless of what technology and solutions you implement. So why use the VIM Foundation at all? So you can't get away from the fact that, whilst there's a big push on Ariba within SAP, especially since SAP bought Ariba, to go for these full B2B kind of applications. Not just Ariba, there's of course there's others like Cooper and iValue and stuff. And the electronic document transfer is fantastic, of course, because it means you get no data loss. It's traceable, it's trackable, and you can, and the rules within like Ariba network or Cooper stuff do restrict on what you can invoice. Though you don't get the flexibility of someone receiving an order then just creating an invoice which doesn't actually match an order. But obviously that's the aspiration for most companies. But you can't get away from the fact that at the moment, and probably for the foreseeable future, much business communication is done via email, sending documents in PDF, or actually still, even these days, on paper, through the mail. The VIM Foundation, along with other OpenText products such as the scanning, the OCR, the optical character recognition, Archive Center for storing documents securely, and the archive and document access, which is kind of like your Archive Center license for the SAP side. We're aiming to eliminate paper as early in the process as possible, okay? And if it comes on PDF, so much the better. But ultimately, we're looking to have one copy of the truth. Now, what that truth What is that truth? That truth is one document accessed electronically by anyone, anywhere, on multiple devices, multiple platforms, SAP GUI, Fiori, whatever, but all at the same time, okay? So we never lose it. We never lose it in internal mail. We don't spill our coffee on it. We can't forget about it because it gets to the bottom of someone's in tray. And it's always there. We can always access it, and we can always view it. So how does Vim optimize the invoice processing? Okay, now the invoice processing has always been an obvious candidate for digitization of documents and collaborative workflows, okay, which is why you have the solutions like vendor invoice management from OpenText, ReadSoft, Kofax, who else? Easy. I mean, there's so many invoice processing tools out there for SAP, for Oracle e-business, standalone, you name it. There's an invoice processing solution available. Okay, but if we're talking Vim in the SAP world, by far and away, Vim is kind of the market leader. Okay. And that's because it can take all our documents from a variety of sources. You can do EDI, the iDocs, the XMLs, paper, manual upload. I mean, you name it, direct email. We can take it, ingest it through Vim, through the VIM Foundation. If it needs to be OCR'd, the optical character recognition, we can do that. We'll check the data. We validate the data, we make sure the master data is correct, we make sure the GR has been done. If it needs a goods receipt, if it needs approval, we can send it for approval, and all this happens before we actually post it in SAP and pay. Okay. Now these same principles about the workflows and the routing and the checking that the data is correct, we can apply these to the Vim Beyond Invoice solutions in the exact same manner. So, as I mentioned before, the Beyond Invoices kind of covers the business documents that and the process that complement the invoicing, both on P2P and OTC. Okay, so we've already got the technology in place. We've got Vim since several years now, must be 5 or 6 years. We've got what was Business Center Inbound, now called VIM Foundation Inbound. That's there. Unless you're on a really old version of Vim, you should have been upgraded and you'd be using this now. And you have the same benefits. We got check duplicates. We can run the workflows. We can refer documents. We can move it around the business. We can keep track. We can report, and ultimately we can automate a document creation at the end of it. Okay, and you can just see here on this little graphic, as the business processes go up, the kind of the highlighted documents. These are what we have out of the box and is available to you out of the box. Again, if you have Vim and these so-called Beyond Invoice solutions. So I don't know if you're all familiar with Intelligent Capture, the current generation of OCR products from OpenText. Oh, excuse me. So previously, the optical character recognition systems, not just OpenText, everyone, they had to be taught, okay, which is generally either creating a template or some kind of offline copy, or somehow actually separate from the business process, a technical exercise to go and teach the OCR software what it needs to extract from an invoice and where it is. So, okay, this is the invoice number, and this is where it is on supplier X invoice. Okay, this is the invoice reference number, and this is where it exists on supplier Y's invoice, and that sort of thing. It's quite laborious. You just had to do it. Practically speaking, you can only do it for your most common suppliers. So Intelligent Capture is different. Instead of you teaching it, it actually learns itself, okay, from what you as an end user are doing as part of the business process of actually using Vim, okay. especially when we use it with the validation client. Now, the validation client, if you're not familiar, is a piece of software that we can run, and I'll show you in a moment if you've never seen it, that we can run after the OCR extraction is completed. We can say whether we want someone to actually manually, if you like, check or validate, I guess, that that information has been extracted correctly. Okay, and we can do it, and we can say, okay, we'll always validate everything, or we'll never validate. We'll let the system have its best shot, and we'll just let it flow into Vim. Or you can set a threshold and say, okay, I expect these 5 key fields, date, reference number, gross amount, tax amount, supplier and company code, let's say, and if the OCR fails to extract any of those from the invoice, then we'll send it to validation, and the user can correct the data. Now, when that user is correcting the data, the machine learning of intelligent capture remembers that, okay, I was missing the invoice date, and this is where the user clicked on the image to actually populate the invoice date. Okay, I'll remember that for next time. Okay, so it remembers and it learns by what you do kind of interactively in validation client. Okay, and underpinning all this is like what's called the document knowledge base, where it's like a library of hundreds of different document formats: the invoices, the sales orders, order confirmations, remittance, deliveries. The OpenText have kind of compiled from countries all around the world, from various projects or whatever, to actually give us like a repository of common formats, let's say, for the different document types. So what this means is actually from day one out of the box, probably 75% of the key header fields, the intelligent capture could probably locate correctly. Okay, then there's only that last 25% it needs to learn as you correct in the validation. All right. Now, an important thing about, or an important component when you talk about the VIM Foundation and the invoice solutions is what we call document classification. Okay. Now, what this means is we can almost create like a digital mailroom, okay, to receive all our incoming documents, okay? Because I don't know if you've already got Vim, but you might set up a dedicated invoice mailbox, email, and tell all your suppliers to send their invoices to this email address and only send invoices. But invariably, in that same email, they'll send you not only the invoices, they'll send you statements. They might send you remittance advices. They might send you if there's a late payment. They might send you this. They might send, there's all manner of rubbish would get sent through this. Okay. Now, what we can do here is actually say, well, okay, maybe that isn't such a bad thing. We can just have all our incoming documents coming into one or two sort of email mailboxes, and we'll let the OCR sort it out. Okay. So we could actually scan a document through the optical character recognition, identify what type of document that is, and then knowing that it's going to be an invoice or a delivery or an order confirmation, then we can actually send it back around a loop to run the OCR again. But this time, knowing that it's an invoice, our document knowledge base will actually say, okay, now I'm processing an invoice, I'm expecting to find these fields relating to an invoice, or if it's a delivery, I'm expecting to define these fields which are common on a delivery note. Okay, so then you kind of optimizing the extraction of the optical character recognition depending on the type of document. Well, the last thing that we do is kind of interpretation. So we have the data, which is fine, we've extracted it, but we also cross-reference the data with other data that we've got. So, for instance, if we know it's an American invoice and there's a date on it, we know it's going to be in the month, day, year format rather than the day, month, year format of Europe. Similarly, for decimal places in the amounts, whether you use the comma as the decimal separator or the full stop. So again, it cross-references the data we've got with the data it's extracted, and then kind of makes adjustments necessary before sending across to the solutions. Right, and so from a practical point of view, how would a Beyond Invoice solution help your business? Okay. Now, if we take this P2P scenario of purchase order confirmations, okay, then we have this order confirmation solution. So we can extract the data using the OCR, just like we do with the invoices. We can check for completeness, we can check for correctness, we can have a similar rules and checks and balances applied to this. We can go and update the purchase order with the confirmed quantities, the prices, and the delivery dates. That by sending the order confirmation, that is in effect the supplier committing then to actually deliver what they've said, which might be different to what you actually ordered. It could be material numbers have changed. It could be they don't have something in stock, so they might send you a substitute. And this is all kind of important stuff to know, and whether you accept it or not, depending on the business, whether you can use substitute parts if you're in kind of manufacturing. I mean, this is important stuff to know. But the upshot is, if you accept this order confirmation and we update the purchase order accordingly to actually what the customer, the supplier is committed to deliver, that means when we receive that invoice or do the goods receipts, then everything should match up. Okay, so when we come to receive the invoice, it should hopefully, fingers crossed, sail through with a three-way match, and of course the holy grail of no-touch invoice processing. Okay, which we wouldn't necessarily have if we weren't doing the ordering confirmations and getting that commitment from the supplier on what they're going to deliver, and importantly when. Okay, so for instance, VIM workflows around goods receipting, if we know quite often the invoice might be sent out electronically as soon as the goods leave the supplier. Now that invoice will arrive almost immediately, but the goods might take another week whilst they're on the back of a truck. And if we know the delivery date is not for another week, we can check that and say, okay, well, I don't need to flag the fact that there's a goods receipt missing for this invoice because they're not due to arrive for another week. Therefore, let's just move it off to the side. We don't need anyone in accounts payable to look at it. We'll check the delivery date in a week. We'll maybe give them 2 or 3 days extra just in case there's a delay. And if we still haven't received the goods receipts, then we'll flag it to accounts payable, and we can actually start the workflow and find out what's going on. Okay, so hopefully that all makes sense.
Unmuted.
Okay. I think I'm back. Okay, so I'm just going to run through quickly the document, the order confirmation scenario. Okay, so this is transaction 08WD, standard SAP uploading a document into the archive. Okay, so I don't know what type of document it is, but I'm just going to upload it. So I can click this and I can select it from the file system. Where is it on my desktop? It's this one. Okay, so I upload it. I've accessed the file. Yes. Okay, and then here down the bottom it's created. Right, so this now, if I go to, this is what's called the VIM Foundation workplace, and here all are what's called a work center. If I look at the inbound admin, so previously this would have been known as business center inbound. Okay, so we can see here, this is my order confirmation, which has come in. Okay, so just the same as any VIM, you get to see the history, so it's registered. Now there is a batch job which processes this, but for the sake of expediency, I can actually trigger these manually, but this would normally just be a background process. So rather than wait. I can come and click this here, execute. So you can see now, so it's changed here from processing to waiting. And it's waiting because it's actually been here. You see the status, sent to extraction. Okay, so this is its first pass through the OCR. It doesn't take long. I refresh. Okay, so the extraction is completed. Now I've set it that we always use the validation client. Okay, so the next step after extraction is to check the data with validation. So you can see here that here's my status ready for validation. Now this here is the OpenText validation client. Okay, so I have several OCR applications, and you can see here that within my classification profile, I've got one document pending. Okay, so if I open this, so I've created a very simple kind of validation application. I mean, we've kind of got the supplier and the company code, but what I'm really interested in is what type of document is it? Okay, so I can see here that it's an order confirmation. So I just select it from the drop down and say, okay, well, this is an order confirmation. Okay, so reprocess it through the OCR, knowing that it is an order confirmation. Okay, so I click submit. And then if you go back and look in our history of inbound administration, so here's my validation is completed. And you can see here, look, so you can see here our classification is the default, okay? If I execute it manually, then you see, so it's waiting, so it's gone back to the OCR. And you can see now a classification, so it's now processing it as an order confirmation. Okay, so it's changed what it thinks it is. It now knows it's an order confirmation. It's going to process it before. And you can see here in the status classification processed, and it's gone back to extraction. You see, so we had it here twice. This is the first time it went round, and now it's gone through again. Okay. Taking a little bit longer this time. Right, okay, so the extraction is completed. Now again, I've set it to always validate so we can kind of see what's going on better. Now, it could be that that first step is done by someone in like the mailroom. So all they do is literally sort out documents coming in. Click, this is an order confirmation. This is an invoice, order confirmation, invoice, invoice, invoice. You know, and then we can have a separate team of users who then do the validation, you know, of the actual documents and the check. Or we can just set it to go right through and say, okay, well, we'll let the system have its best shot and we'll see what we get. Okay, so if I now go back to validation, and if I change, you can see now in my order confirmation, I have one document pending. So if I open this, okay, so it's done good. So it's got most of the main things I want. So it's got my purchase order number, the document date, the delivery date. So my delivery date is now going to be 30th of October, 2022. So I'm happy. It's got everything I need. I don't need to add any payment terms. But so, for instance, I might add the net amount. So for those of you not familiar with validation client, the way it works and the way the OCR would learn is if you simply just put your cursor into any field you want, and then move your cursor over the image, then you can see here. So the net amount, if I just highlight that, you can see then it highlights 305. And I simply just click it, and it transfers the data across. Okay, and then that's how it learns. So it remembers, okay, I wanted net amount, and that's where I clicked on the document. Okay, and it's the same for all of these things, but actually it got everything quite well. So when I'm happy with that, I just submit. It's got everything I need, and then it's gone. So we don't need that anymore. If we check our history in the inbound administration, so our validation is completed. So rather than wait for the batch job, I'll just process it manually. And now it's gone, it's been processed. Okay. So, as someone in the correct department, I'm going to go to my order confirmation application. And in my team, here's my order confirmation document. Okay, this is the one who just passed through the OCR, right? Now, it's very similar to VIM. Once we execute it, the screen looks slightly different, but fundamentally it's kind of the same. We have what in VIM terms would be called process options. Okay, so we can refer, which actually moves the workflow from one person to another. We can inquire, is just actually just sending an inquiry, but we don't actually change the workflow ownership. We can add comments, say order confirmation received, if we need to. Right, this is a useful little feature. We can actually just send an email. So if you've got a query about this, okay, we can actually send a mail directly back to the supplier and say, okay, yes, we've looked at your confirmation. That's grand, but we've got a question on it because it's not quite what we ordered. For instance, it might be that what you've ordered is out of stock and the supplier put on a substitute part. Okay, now if you don't necessarily want to accept that without speaking to them first and see if there's any implications. Okay, so from here you can just send an email out and actually ask them the question. Okay, and obviously we can see our invoice image here. Right, and just like VIM, we can do this simulate rules thing. Okay, so if you click simulate rules here, then this actually tells us, we have this traffic light issue, and tells us kind of what's wrong. Okay, so the first one we can see, we're missing some mandatory information. And if we click this, okay, so it's missing order unit, right? Okay, and then we've got here number of items differs from the PO. Okay, one line ready for confirmation. Okay, so what does that actually look like? So we can look at our line items then and see what's being proposed. Okay, so here's our material. Actually, okay, but it's got the same thing twice. Is that correct? So let's go and look at our purchase order. So we can actually see that, okay, we've got two lines, but actually we've got two materials. So we've got material 2 and material 1. Okay, and one of the other things that was flagging up was we haven't got confirmation of item 2. Okay, so there's no confirmation control. Okay, so we can make some changes here and say, okay, yes, we do actually want item 2 to be confirmed as well. Right, so we can go back and actually say, okay, so this was incorrect. That should be actually EWS 01, right? Then you can save it, right? And it's, what else have we got? Okay, you can simulate. Okay, so we're still missing mandatory information. Our quantity is different. Okay, and our net price is different. Okay, so why have we got that? Well, if you look here, then you can see that what they've sent us is an invoice for one box containing 25 small parts and one box containing 10 small parts. And if we look on the PO, well, we have actually ordered 25 small parts and and 10 fast-moving small parts, but we've ordered them as each, and they obviously send them as a box. Okay, so the whole point, I mean, we can just post the confirmation as it is, but really, you actually want to update the PO, so when you actually do get the invoice and the goods receipt, everything is then actually matching to what the supplier is actually going to invoice us for. Okay, so let's just change this. Sorry, to 1 and 1, and it's not pieces. There's going to be a box. Well, box, I mean, that's a carton. Okay, so let's set it to a carton as well, rather than a piece. Carton is the same as a box. Okay. So we need to say, update our net price. As well, which I forgot to do. So it would be 250. That was 55. And a carton. And the other 1 and 1. Okay. Right, so it still says we're missing some information here. So an order unit. But what we can do is we have this button called enrich data. Okay, so it's just, this is a bit like the line item matching in VIM. Okay, but we can do this real time, so we can actually say, okay, let's enrich that data and see if we can actually complete the missing data that we've got. Okay, so there's nothing there. And of course, no data enrichment there. Okay, so what's it? Well, maybe we need to save. What's missing? Order unit. Order unit. So actually, we're going to be in cartons, aren't we? Okay, good. So that was it. Okay, so now we've got a green, but now we've still got this one to look at. Number of items differs from PO. One item relevant for confirmation, and I thought we done that. Okay, so actually delete that line, and let's recreate it. That's an O1 box. Carton 155. Amount 55. Okay, well, let's save that and see if we can enrich the data here and see what's missing. Okay, purchase order, purchase. So okay, so now it's actually said okay, I recognize it now. This is item 20 on the PO. So I'll accept that, like a bit like the invoice matching. Save and simulate. Okay. Delivery date, enter currency, line item 2. Right, it seems to be going a bit slow, unfortunately. But I think you get the idea. So it's very much like Vim in this respect. You have your traffic lights on you simulate rules. You go through. You can if you can resolve an issue, you can. If you need to refer it to someone else, you can refer it. So our delivery date is the 30th of October. Save, and then ultimately at the end of it, when everything is done, we can submit it. Okay, it'll create the document. Okay, once all these are green, we can just submit. Okay. Now, in the best style of children's TV, here's one I did earlier. We're going to look at a previous purchase order. This is actually a brand new SAP system we've got here, which is why we're still on our second purchase order. If I go and look, change my order to number 1. Then you can see here, so this is the confirmation that was posted. Okay, so everything matches. We created it last week. Now got the correct delivery date. So when this invoice comes in and the goods receipt, we're actually expecting everything to match 100% perfectly, because we actually are being invoiced what the supplier has committed to on his order confirmation. Okay, so if you're just conscious of time, unfortunately, I think I'm running over as usual. I like the sound of my own voice. So we looked at the beyond invoices. These are the pre-configured solutions that are available. But VIM Foundation is highly flexible, and we can create your own tailored solutions for almost any incoming document in SAP. Anything that might come into the business as a piece of paper, we can create a solution for it in the VIM Foundation. Very similar. We can refer it around, create the workflows, do our checks. So it's quite technical in nature. It's not, VIM's quite mature as a product, and we can do a lot of configuration as pure configuration. The VIM Foundation, creating your own solution, is actually quite technical. Part of the flexibility comes from the fact that you can create your own functionality, but that does mean that you need kind of experienced ABAP and ABAP skills rather than just pure, configuration. Okay, but you can see here we can anything that's coming in, sort of Rex, approval of master data. So if, in a VIM scenario, if an invoice has come in and they're asking to be paid to a different bank account, then it might be that you need to request them to say you've got to submit an official change of master data form, to make sure that the invoice isn't fraudulent and someone hasn't submitted an invoice that looks very like a supplier's but with their own fraudulent bank details on. Okay, so we can then scan that through the OCR, have a little workflow, send it off to the vendor maintenance team. They can update the master data, and then I'll feed back through to VIM, and then in VIM you can post and pay the invoice and make sure that you know that it's going to the correct bank account. Okay, so in summary, then the key benefits, just like the invoice solution, it's fully integrated into SAP, ECC, S4HANA. Generally, if you've got VIM, everything's already deployed, so it's easy, to deploy. There's no real new technology. We don't need new servers or anything like that. The hardware, the infrastructure is already there. Excuse me. Just like VIM, we can do automation. The more the data is correct, the more we can automate. If our in that order confirmation scenario, once we understand how our suppliers are going to be invoicing us, we can create our purchase orders accordingly. So instead of creating 25 pieces, we know next time we'll create the order as one box. Everything else is the same. So reduce your total cost of ownership is actually leveraging more from your investment in VIM, especially if you've got unused license capacity. If you bought, let's say, 100,000 invoice license, but actually turns out you're only receiving 80,000 invoices a year. You've actually got 20,000 spare documents, let's say, that you could use for anything else within VIM Foundation, either one of the pre-configured solutions or create your own solution, and that'll be covered under the license. And then, of course, it's all the integration with Fiori, SAP, HANA, everything you like. It's all there. Okay, so that's the end of my little time. So, is there any questions? No. Okay. So, as Michelle says, we'll share the deck afterwards, and if you then think about it and you've got any questions or want a bit more information, then just please let us know. But hopefully that there's been of some interest, and kind of, if you do have VIM, giving you some ideas of how you can better leverage your investment, or if you don't use VIM, it's giving you some ideas that VIM is more than just processing invoices. Okay, and thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.